Hey y'all, welcome to Sibyl's Lab of Cartomantics. My name is Amelia, and I am here today to do a little bit of a walkthrough through the Tarot de Ozarks. So this was a request that was made to walk through this deck because I talk about it a lot and I gush about it a lot, and I don't really talk about the why or even the how of my love for it. So I kind of wanted to do a little ode to this deck and how much I love it. A couple of things. So this is available, I believe, on Printers Studio. It's one of those print-on-demand sites. It's not Make Playing Cards and it's not Game Crafter, but it's one of the others. I think it's Printers Studio. And I'll be sure to link that in the description box so that you can get a copy of your own. This is the second edition with the flowery backs that Lori LaPlage, also known as Pranic Room, on Instagram, and I believe their art is posted under that handle elsewhere on the internet. They changed the backs from the original backs, which were these like kind of Christmassy ornament looking backs. They felt kind of like a generic back that they had picked from, just like, here are some options. But they redrew and redesigned the backs for the second edition. Now, a disclaimer, I guess. I have heard on the internet somewhere that Lori, who is the creator, the artist of this deck, has passed away. I have not heard, but I've not seen any like official, I guess, so to speak, confirmation of that. So I don't know. I don't know if Lori LaPlage is still with us or if they've passed on. I'm not entirely sure. I do know they used to be pretty active on Instagram, especially doing a lot of like cartomantic readings with playing cards, and they are no longer. So, but I don't know what that means. Like, you know, sometimes people just are sick of the internet, which I don't blame them. So yes, there you have it. I do know, as far as I can tell, you can still order the deck from Printer Studio. If they have passed away, that is very sad, and makes me, makes my heart hurt a little bit, especially because of how much I love this deck, and how much I respect their art and kind of what they try to do with tarot. Another thing, I know this is a long introduction, I'm sorry, I promise we'll get into the cards soon. Another thing is that I'll post down below is there's a really awesome video that NAHA from 22 Teachings did regarding this deck that included some information because they had interviewed the artist, and so they shared some of that information from that interview in that video, and that's a good one to watch as well if you're curious about like artist's intent and that sort of stuff. So one thing I do know is that Lori never claimed to make a Tarot de Marseille. However, the influence of historic tarot is so strong in this deck. You know how there are some decks that maybe don't claim to be Rider-Waite-Smith decks, but you can absolutely see the influence of Rider-Waite-Smith on the deck. This deck has such a strong influence of Tarot de Marseille and historic tarot in it. So to me, I consider this in a category of like Tarot de Marseille adjacent type decks. Yeah, but let's get into the cards. So Jay, when you made this request, which I think I said this already, but Jay at Iridescent Tarot, I know you requested to see a walkthrough of these cards. This is for you. I was trying to get this out sooner, but life things. It is the holiday season when I'm filming this. And I was like, yes, absolutely, I can do that. I would love to talk about this deck more. And then I started overthinking it because I wanted to do it justice, and I wanted to do my relationship with this deck justice, and I just couldn't, I don't know, I was overthinking it. And so I told myself, Amelia, just sit down with the cards and turn the camera on, and let's see what happens. Okay. So we're starting here with the Fool, and already you're getting a sense of the style of this deck. It's very painterly. It's a little bit abstracted, but not totally abstract. Like, you can still see figures and things like that. But her use of color in this deck, and this is one of the things that I love about this deck so much, is the use of color. I love when color feels really thoughtful in a deck, and it's not just like, I don't know, the water is blue because water is blue, but it's like the shade of blue feels really intentional and thoughtful. And her use of color, particularly in the backgrounds of cards, because as you can see, the backgrounds of all the cards are different. Well, they're not all different. You see white repeating a lot, and you see certain repetitions of color, but they're not the same color on all the backgrounds. And I love that in a reading. It just kind of elevates it. Another thing that I really love is her use of texture in the art. This is mixed media, I'm going to venture. Some of it feels really like watercolor, and then one of the things that I didn't know until I got it in hand is a lot of the line work appears as if it was done digitally. So I think she like laid down color using various mediums and then put it into, probably Procreate or something of that nature, and added digital line work, which is my style of painting. I don't use digital mostly because I don't have the tools for that, but I start with laying down color when I paint, when I do watercolor, and then I go in and I add my line work after the fact instead of starting with line work and then laying down color, because I feel like the process is so much more organic that way. So yes, her use of color, her use of texture, her use of line is used only where it's needed, which I really appreciate. And I'll just keep flipping through. And here's some of where you can see like where the work gets a little abstracted, like the face of the magician isn't totally complete here. We just see a suggestion of a face. And I think, some of the magic for me of this deck isn't necessarily in looking at individual cards so much as it is seeing how these cards have conversations with each other, because the art is so dynamic. And I think in that video that Naha did, she talks about how Lori said that she didn't really come to tarot to create a tarot as a tarot reader, but as an artist, and that comes through really strongly in the cards. And because the images themselves are so dynamic, you're going to hear me use the word texture a lot because it's so present here. But the way the color moves on the image, the way the lines are used to create really select definition, there's a lot of energy in the images in these cards, and the way that energy moves and flows from one card to the next, the way it interacts with the cards around it, is so strong. And I think what I want to do after I walk through all of the cards, which hopefully I won't just keep blabbing forever and ever about this, is I want to pull some cards and show them in context with each other, because to me that's the magic of this. Okay, so La Papesse, I love the kind of, I don't know if it's a nod to the Black Madonna, but I absolutely feel that when I look at this card. This sort of like deep and mysterious knowledge that she holds, and we get everything in the traditional Tarot de Marseille. And I even thought about walking through this like side by side with another Tarot de Marseille, like the Dodal or the Noblet, but I kind of wanted to let it stand on its own. But there are definite, this feels like such a nod to the TDM Papesse, and she just, look at her eyes, they bore into your soul. I could get lost in this one in particular for hours, and I'm actually going to set her aside because I believe we see her again. So here we have our Empress. Just look at like the comparison between these two. If we have our two like ladies of the tarot, like here we have this like stark black, white and black in the background. The colors are really intense here. They're really, she looks so severe herself. And then here in the Empress, we have our background of this like light kind of tealy blue. And I'm hoping the camera is picking up a good color for this, but we have this like light tealy blue, and we have like our edges are a little bit softer. See how our Empress doesn't have all of her edges defined in the way that the Papess does. And and her hair is flowy. We see her hair, we don't really see the Papess's hair. And the colors are really like bleeding into each other, and we don't get that like dark, like the severity of the black that we get in this card. So you can already kind of see how she plays with the archetypes in a way, like just through her art and the way she suggests it through the art. Of course, you always have to have the Empress paired with the Emperor because they are a pair, they go together. But look at his like yellow. He is all yellow and red and fire. And she used black line work here. Here we see the use of some stark white line work, as well as like some stark patches of white behind him. And he's very angular. We get the angularity really present. And this is all stuff that's present in the Tarot de Marseille as well, but it almost feels like her approach to the art of the cards and like just emphasizes that a little bit further. At least for me, like when I look at these cards, it kind of transcends being able, like, language and like a linguistic interpretation. And these are cards that I feel in the way that you, like, when you're viewing art. I don't know about any of y'all, but I love to just go wander around the art museums in our area. I'm very lucky that I have access to 2 really excellent art museums that are free to the public. And so I love just wandering around there and, like, without thinking, just letting the art impact me and thinking and considering and reflecting more on the impact than on the art itself, if that makes sense. And these cards are just so impactful with the way that they are depicted and drawn. God, look at all that fire. Like, he is lit up. Okay. Then we have our Pope. Here we have the introduction of this blue, which you'll see this particular shade of blue a lot in this deck. And, you know, again, playing with the texture and like all the elements are there. This is the Pope as it is portrayed in the Tarot de Marseille, but just her, like, look at these like almost opaque. Like, prior to this, we are working a lot with colors that are a little bit more luminescent. There's some transparency to them. And then in the Pope, we just get this like really strong, opaque, the green and the blue. And thinking about like the way he's standing in front of the pillars, thinking about sometimes the Hierophant or the Pope he's a bit of a gatekeeper between us and God. And the opacity there, I think, just like emphasizes that a little bit more of like the opacity of the church, the opacity of the Pope. Like, you know, it almost feels like we're never quite getting the full picture. And is it because we can't handle the truth, or is it because they're hiding something? Like, you know, and there's just so many ways that you can go with that. And here we're back to those more transparent colors with the watercolor here, and this like deeply kind of earth-colored textured background. And one of the things, I mean, in kind of the way I like to play with color and reading is like here we have our lover in the center, and we have in his bottom half a kind of draw to what the majority of this figure over here is colored in, and then his top half is this green, and we see that reflected over here in this figure. And so it almost feels like he contains kind of these 2 sides within. And then we have our angel up at the top, and again, just like really suggestive, not literal in its depictions. And here we have our bright yellow chariot. Like, I look at this card and I feel like I'm ready to go. Like, I feel like I'm up, I'm awake, let's go. That's like that, again, just that use of color really is evocative. It evokes a feeling. I love this. So one of the things in the Marseille is you'll see a lot of like misspellings, and this is le chart. there's no chariot or chariot, and I love that. And we have our two colored. These look like mules to me, and even that there's so much. Like if these are mules, I think about like the stubbornness of a mule. And the way like the background is solid, and then our charioteer is the like kind of textured and dynamic part of this card. And this is why I wanted to save my Papesse, because I feel like she returns injustice. I don't know. There's these cards, and maybe it's just the way that the way their faces are just, they bore into my soul, but I love her. I love our Justice card. This one feels, it's so funny, she feels a little bit like, so if our Papesse has all of this kind of like muddiness here, like it's very severe, but it's also like, we get dapples of colors, and this feels so much more clean and direct, the way we have like the red and the red around her. The line work used on her chair is very like severe and thick. Our hermit is like dark background, and he has his light, and he can only see just what is directly in front of him. We've got a little like nod to a path here below. The wheel, again, so dynamic, so alive. So especially like if we tell the story of moving from the hermit into the wheel, it's like darkness moving into bam. Everything is red, and that fire, and just even our figure here on top is so yellow. Yeah, love it. It's like that wolf is coming for you. Force, la force, or strength. I love the, like, so the lion is almost like disappearing into her blue skirts. And I love the kind of, like the wateriness of this below, both what we see in the blue and then also the way the pigments are laid down on the paper. It's very watery. And it almost feels as if the suggestion here is like that strength is softness. That our softness is our strength. Notice how like there are no lines used in her body. The lines are kind of very sparing. And so to me, this speaks of a softer side of strength. Even though we have our lion, but he's like emerging from the watery depths. Le Pendu. So I love this because it makes me think of in Thoth and like Golden Dawn associations for the Hanged Man. Like there's that moment, it's that moment before like diving into the depths of Scorpio of death, and water is often associated with the Hanged Man, and we've got this like watery portal behind him. But here it's like that water is kind of expanding and going outward, and here it's like contained. And this really does feel like such a portal with the way she's drawn this out. And like he, in contrast, feels so rigid, and it's almost like there's like a conflict between what he's being called to do, which is like to enter these watery depths, and like what he wants to do, which is like, kind of be stuck in his ways with all of his like sharp lines and his sharp feet, his pointy boots. All right, and we've got death, which I always love. I love a good death card. And the TDM death is one of my favorite like versions of death. I also really love the Thoth death. But I love the birds that we have flying around here in the background. And temperance, so we get, again, we're like getting some of this water, but like look at kind of, I mean, so we get this shock of blue. Oh god, and look at the way she's like done the text on this. It's very like frenetic almost. So we get like these like flashes of blue here, but most of this card, with the exception of her yellow vessels and a little bit in her hair, is very earthy, very earth toned. And like, you know, I can look at this card on its own and be like, what can I do with that? It feels really juicy, but also it's, again, like the magic is what kind of earthiness is this attaching into with other cards that might be around it. The Devil, love him. He is a party. Like, this feels like a rave. And so that's what this Devil feels like. Which, I mean, can be fun, but also, like, this can also be a really bad trip. The Tower, and here's a good example of how her line work tells such a story with all of these just like rays coming out of there. We've got all of our kind of specklies, which normally would be the yods coming down, but here it's just like a bunch of polka dots, which we love. Her use of perspective also is really interesting. So like, this guy's feet are huge, and like perspective and proportion. I mean, we know in the Tarot de Marseille, or I guess I shouldn't say we know, but you know, generally speaking, in the Tarot de Marseille, the person falling out of the tower is usually not too much smaller than the tower itself, which there's some interesting stuff there that can be done. But here, not only is he, you know, kind of the same, almost the same size as the tower, like if he were standing up, he would be like up to here on it, but his feet are huge. And like, I don't know, what kind of interesting stuff can we do about like your feet being too big, or, you know, almost like a little bit of cockiness because you feel like your base is really strong, you know? I don't know. And the Star. Again, moving into all of this, like she almost like disappears into the background. Like it feels like making the background of the star white is a choice. Like it could have been, you know, this kind of like bluey color that we see here in the stars. It could have been like green. I mean, there are so many things that could have happened with the background of this, but she chose to make it white. And I don't know, that feels intentional. That feels specific. The Moon, we have our gray background. We've got like my eye. She uses this kind of poppy red a lot, which aside from being one of my favorite colors, I feel like also just it like really stands out. Moon, yeah. And then we have our sun. Again with the white background, but then we have like this almost like there's heaviness down here, which is so interesting. Like it feels bottom, like this card feels bottom heavy in the composition because we have this like dark kind of bluey steel gray and the brown, and then up here we have so much white space, and you know, we don't have these boxes down here. We have this kind of really dynamic and round, like the roundishness of the rays of the sun. Yeah, there's just so many ways that my brain can go with that. Judgment, the rays, oh my gosh, the rays, I love it. Again, like super suggestive. These almost feel like shadows of people, which is interesting. Ooh, what could that mean? It can mean so many things. in the world. Again, like this feels kind of like the same portal that our Hanged Man was in. This time it's round. And she's kind of round to fit the theme. I love world cards, and I particularly love world cards that stick to the like kind of traditional historic presentation. All right, now we're getting into our minors. Let's see. I'm sorry, this is just gonna be a long video. So I kind of want to pull out, so these are our, again with like the backgrounds, these are our minor, like just kind of looking at background colors. These are the ones, or the béton. So there's an interesting color story being told here. Like if we're going, technically we're going this way, so from ace to 10, like the introduction of this like tan and like, whoa, we got blue going on here, and then back into that tan earthy tones. It's just interesting things to pay attention to. Her use of the like white around the ace, or like the béton here in the center, is, it almost feels like this is contained, you know? Like the energy of that wand is being contained. And here we're like breaking out of the energy, like especially moving from this into this, it feels like it's kind of busting that open a little bit. And we're seeing this red is going to come up a lot. This kind of rusty red is going to come up a lot in this suit. Here we see it here, and like we're really kind of breaking it open, and we see the blooming of the flower. And if you were to look at this side by side with a TDM, it stays pretty close to the energy of the filigree in the filigree work in the Tarot de Marseille, obviously with her own artistic spin on the whole thing. But even just going from the two with the like kind of smaller flower to the more open flower in the three that is present. And then we have the introduction of this almost like tan, like fleshy background. Which to me, when I see this color, I think of like temporary, like flesh does not last forever. Like, you know, I think of like a peach rots pretty quickly. And so I think of like whatever the energy is that's going on here in the 4 is temporary. But also it can mean something completely different given the reading that happens. But here we have like some rose action in the center. And here we have more of a bouquet, which is kind of interesting. And we get this like strong line. And again, just like really dynamic here on the end. It feels like we're really, like the energy is like shooting out almost. And then here we have the blue with that kind of peachy, fleshy color contained within the béton themselves. We have just little seeds of red here in the center. And then here we go back to this almost like contained energy with the white border around it. But it feels like we're piercing through right there in the center. And this feels almost like a pearl, like there's something that's being protected here in the center. It's kind of like yellowy with some white highlights on it. I don't know, it feels like there's some like a pearl or like a nugget of gold that we're like working with here. And the 8, you know, we've got these like really like cross-hatched lines here, but they're also like, I don't know, the blurriness of it all. So we have something like this where we've got such clearly defined, you know, points and lines and all that sort of stuff. And again, it's like, it just feels like a choice to not clearly define this. And then to have this like dual background where part of it's white and part of it is this tan color. To me, it feels like I look at this card and I feel confused. I feel maybe like there's a lot of like conflicting stuff going on around me. I feel like I am overstimulated maybe, especially with these like vines kind of growing out, and like that to me just speaks it just, you know, and it's not a complete thought. And again, that's why I think the magic of this deck is when you really start laying out cards together, is because each of these is kind of their own incomplete thought is completed by what's around it. But again, like I'm just seeing like how this is so not clearly defined as an image, as opposed to something like this that is a little bit more clearly defined. And like what interesting stuff can be done there. The 9 feels even less defined. Like, yes, we've got the contrast between the almost like greenish gray of the wands themselves, but they're like, that's why I love watercolor. They're like bleeding into the background. And like here in the center, we don't even know what's going on. It's almost like corally peachy color, bleeding out and over and covering up some of the wands. And we've got all of our vines growing in between the wands. Yeah, it's almost like we're losing control here. That's what this feels like. Oh, and then we go into like, while not clearly defined with the line work, there is very little bleeding in this card. We've got such strongly defined center points here, and like a really strong 2 baton here in the center. We've got birds, like the suggestion of birds. So like, what could that mean? And then our line work is incorporating some red lines. Like we don't see that here. But we do see it here, and our 10 is written in red. It's like, what can we do with this color story of this dark, almost like raw umber color, and this more tan color, and this like bright poppy red? Like, what kind of color story does that tell? These are the questions that I ask myself when I work with this deck. Got our Page of Wands. And our Knight. He feels like he's fading a little bit. Which is funny. I mean, he's sitting the wrong way on his horse. What a goof. But like, yeah, I mean, if in, you know, if you're thinking about from left to right is moving forward through time, our horse is facing the past, but his head is turned toward the future. Our knight is facing the future, but he's sitting the wrong way on his horse. Like he's not going to get anywhere. And then combine that with like the fading that's present here, it kind of feels like, I don't know, like he's a little confused. Maybe he's like fading away into time. He's stuck in the past, and it makes it hard to move forward to the future. Our queen, she's just so enveloped by her robes here. It's kind of like earthy, rusty robes with all their flowers and the red here in the, like, you know, where the branches are severed on the baton mimics the red jewels in her crown. Got our king of baton with his wand pointing down. And he feels really severe too with all of his lines. But then if you look at like the colors themselves, they're muddy. Very, very muddy. All right, and let's do that again. We were looking at all the like backgrounds with the cups. So we see a little bit of pink. Gonna see more of that poppy red. This is pretty traditional Terre de Marseille, with our kind of like city sitting in the cup, our kingdom. Our Two of Cups, again, not a ton of really distinct line work being used here, and that, again, just feels like a choice. So these are my repeated refrains when looking through this deck. Textures, lines, colors, and feels like a choice. But yeah, like the inside of the cup being this bright red, like what does that say? And this kind of like dark blue, which we haven't seen too often so far. It almost feels like the base of these cups are just like disappearing away. They're melting away, kind of into each other. Got our 3, like, okay, so moving from this into the 3, it feels like clarity. Like it feels kind of going from this really busy, full background. Like there's a little bit of white here, but the majority of the card is so, yeah, just busy. There's a lot going on. And then we move here into a lot of negative space. I feel like clarity, like it's, you know, it's like I can breathe a little bit. There's a little bit more space. Now we've got this pink with that light blue running through the center of it. I mean, with this pink alone, there is so much that can be done. Like this, like, it's so sweet. It makes me think of a peony. And almost this like innocence, you know, and then we've got what feels like a river running through everything. Like this just feels like it speaks of a really sweet moment in time, a really like blissful, easy, you know, moment in time. And then this feels so sparse in comparison to anything that we've seen so far, even the 3 of Cups, you know. It's like the heart, your heart's not really in it. And then this kind of like murky, greeny, I don't know, it feels like swamp water is here in this center cup. And it's the biggest one. Then we have these like speckles running through, which could be anything from like rain to stars to, you know, they kind of make me feel like magic or snow even. And in comparison to the 5, which feels a little like sparse and stark and like, I don't know, not a lot of liveliness going on here. Even though there's a lot of empty space here in this card, it still feels lively with this like kind of dynamic stuff going on in the center, and then we've got all of these like speckles falling down around everything. Like it still feels like life, you know? And then, ooh, so here we have our cups have black inside of them. It's like peering into the abyss. You know, maybe even think of like scrying. And then we have this almost like golden color back here that's growing. And here, again, like super stark. Not a lot going on here. In the background or the cups, it's like, it's, you know, just getting it done, getting the business done, you know, sort of thing. Oh, and then this one, I always love when this card comes up because I love the daisies. The daisies. Where it's like here, everything is lined up. We've got it all in a row. There's not a lot of decoration, but there's a sweetness, like the daisies just give a sweetness to the whole thing, you know? There's a warmth. Even if there's not tons of decoration, it's still warm, you know, because of those daisies, which will always make me think of You've Got Mail. And then, we've got all of our stars. This feels like a celebration. Like this feels like such a party. We've got all of our cups sitting around and our stars. We've got our page. His feet almost look like horses' feet. the way the knees are and everything. Our knight. This knight is at the very least sitting the right way on his horse. Even if he is moving into the past, he's at least sitting on this horse. A little bit of nostalgia here. He's also very like, he's not fading, but he's like blurring into himself and the horse, and it's hard to know where one ends and the other begins. And our queen, she looks very regal with her like red, kind of burgundy red robes. She's very luscious to me. And like, what does it say that her like cup is this burgundy red as opposed to that like bright poppy red? And her, what color is her background? It's white. He's got tan behind him. You know, his feet are green. So that makes me think of like being grounded in money or kind of growth oriented, like always wanting his feet to be like moving in the direction of growth. All right, and let's do this with the swords. Here we get this kind of like gray, minty bluey green. The color story being told here with the introduction of this like very dark brown, and we're working a lot with like grays and blues and stuff. It's very cool toned. So yes, we have this like minty blue with these little specks of red. It's like poppy orange. I feel like little sparks. And here we have that blue. It's a little bit different, like a little more green than blue, but this like yellow is peeking through. This warmth is wanting to come in. But in the center here, that yellow can't quite get in there. This one feels so structural with these lines out and around it. And this is like this piercing sword. Oh, I'm sorry, I guess I should have mentioned we're in the suit of swords now. It's the 3 of swords. Like down here, we've got this gray, and then we've also almost got this like, it's like clarity above. And we are almost all gray here with these. This white feels so shocking. But again, like our lines are not smooth. They're not solid colors. They are broken up, a little tattered. Feels like this whole, like a little worse for wear here, but we have our flower in the center. Ooh. Oh, and then we've got this black here in the center. It's like a dark portal that you're entering, or breaking out of even. And our lines are defined with this red. Like this card feels bloody to me. There's something about this card that speaks of like bloody. Like, but it's like, I don't know, it's like the blood of sacrifice or something almost. I don't know. And then this card, our swords, you know, we talk about those 4 being really tattered. Like this feels like it takes it up a level. Like we're fading away almost. And look at this flower, it like barely fits. It's barely contained in there. It's like everything we thought we knew was true, like turns out maybe to not be. Like what we, you know, what we've held on to thus far has started to feel maybe a little bit like a prison, and maybe like it's just not enough, or it's not the whole truth. Here we go, back to a very dark card with the 7. This feels like a light. This almost is like if I were to see this next to the Hermit, I would be so focused on this light and how it's reflected in the card of the Hermit, and like, you know, growth in the darkness, the way we have all these flowers growing in what feels like such a dark card. Like it's nighttime. And we have this card with almost like a burst of energy. And like, again, those 8 swords are like, they're not fading, but they're also, I don't know, they're not very clear. Like you can kind of make it out that there are 4 here and 4 here, but this you can't make out. This is very clear, and it's like ready to burst. Or like maybe we're protecting it, I don't know. This also makes me think of a Sacred Heart. Back to the darkness. This is almost like, it's not showing up on camera, but it's actually not black. It's like a very dark brown, which to me is like so different. Like this is the like, it's like hibernation, the way like a locust, or cicada rather, like you know, grows in the earth, in the dirt. This feels like deep earth, like we're going into a cave almost. And then the 10. This feels like it's almost like a flame, or even, I don't know, like a seed or something like that. Here in the center, and like you can barely make out that there are 2 swords crossed here. And like just thinking about going from this card to this card, we emerge and we're ready to kind of like melt away. Got our page. His sword is like over half of his size, and he's on this very light gray background. Our knight is so red. He's so fiery, like ready for action. And his horse is on his hind legs. Like the colors, especially the colors in the horse, are kind of faded, except for this red. It's super defined, but like the lines are, like we can see his leg defined as it's sitting on the horse. She has such a severe looking face. I do not want to make her mad. Not at all. He looks less severe to me, but even like him in profile feels, but like look at his giant black hat. And he's got all these like dark kind of muddy colors around him. And now we move into the cup suit. Or I'm sorry, the cups. The coins, the coins, the coins. Here's the color story being told in the coins. It's very cheerful compared to what the swords was doing. All right. So our ace, our coin, is the thing that doesn't have color. Let's go, wait. It's so busy. There's so much going on. This card also feels like a party, a little bit. This is, so Tarot de Ozarks, you know, usually, traditionally in the Tarot de Marseille, the 2 of coins is what had the, like, marking of the printer. So we've got that. And then we get into here, and these aren't even, like, they don't look like, you know, like the coins. They look like pomegranates or fruit or something. We've got this bright blue background. This feels like such a card of like growth and ripening. And then this feels more like coins as coins, you know, as like material things, because they're so, we've got this like gold color, and this like kind of steel, or silver or something like that. Got all your stuff. And then here we're seeing, like, we've still got that golden coin, like the idea of you know, wealth, but it's a little bit, it's softer. And then we've got all of these flowers going on here. And then these are fascinating. Like, this is such a bare card. We've got this little, like, we're back to, I don't know if you can see, like, our snow, our rain, whatever we want to call it, our sparkles. And then our coins are just these, like, red, orangey red, with little crosses on the center. And then these feel like flowers. Don't these feel like the daisies that we saw in the, can't remember. I always know it when I see it. I think it's one of the cups cards, I believe. But these are like, I mean, it's even growing from the stems. Blossoming. Cute. I don't know. Can you see that? There. Maybe you can see that a little bit better. The blossoming daisies. And then this feels luxurious. This feels so lavish, so, I don't know, this feels like a bounty, this 8 of coins here. But then, like, ooh, look, we're fading away. With this 9 here, I don't know, this speaks, so like this speaks to me of something that is like organic. And this is the opposite, whatever not organic is. This feels man-made, like these feel like systems, and maybe it's the squarishness and the dots around it, like they almost feel like mechanical parts or something like that. Interesting. And then this feels like modern art. We've got like our squares, and we can see, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can see our 10 coins here, but it feels so abstracted, but also, you know, with our like squares. What do the squares mean as juxtaposed against these kind of like very loosely defined circles? It's like the joining together of order and this idea of like softness, you know? And we've got our page, checking out his coin. Look at his face. Some pages and some of the like court cards they have, like there's one where we see like trees and hills in the background. We see like a cloud here, and some of them just don't have much going on, which is interesting. This feels like, so this is traditionally how the Knight of Coins is portrayed in the Tarot de Marseille. It's like floating above him. But because of her use of color here, this almost feels like a sun. Like he's like looking at the sun. And here we see we have like mountains and trees and stuff. He feels so much more defined by like what this blue that's around him than by his own color, you know? She's another favorite of mine. She's earthy. All these earthy colors. And very like, she feels so organic. Like she's almost like grown from the earth. And then our king. He feels so separate from what's around him. Like he's very self-contained. The way that line work and the blue kind of interact with each other. All right, so that is the Tarot de Ozarks. And I know we're running the long one. It's just going to be a long one. I wanted to pull a 3-card spread just to show you kind of how the magic of this deck works. At least for me. Everybody's going to be a little bit different, right? But I am just a huge fan of open reading. Sorry, I threw half of my cards all over the place. I'm just a big fan of open reading, and to me this deck is it feels like it was made for that. And open reading being kind of not committing to an 8 is always this, the coins always mean this, but just really being open to what I see on the cards and how I see the cards interacting with what's around it. So let's see. I have a feeling some of these probably ended up getting upside down thanks to my bad shuffling, but we'll deal. We can flip it over if we need to. No big deal. All right, let's pull 3 cards. I do want to ask a question. I'm going to ask this deck, what is tarot? What do you think tarot is? I have to move some things. Okay, so magic. Let's talk about it. First thing my eye is drawn to is this blue, as it is contrasted to the kind of dark tones that we have over here. This blue says, look at me, look at me. So I'm gonna look at it and I'm gonna take it all in. And it feels like with this sword, this sword it feels like it's extending past the edge of the card. And it feels like, and the very nature of it being a sword, I feel like what we're talking about here is this sort of like pointed clarity, this really directed, very direct, thinking, almost like a slicing through of this murkiness over here. So that this feels super, even though it's the 10, right? It's the culmination of the suit, but it's so murky. And then over here we have this this minty bluey color that kind of it overwhelms that murky kind of ill-defined color that we have over here. It's very muddy. If I were making a painting, this color would come from me mixing too many different colors together, right? And so, it's almost like there's too much going on here. The 10 is too much. And this, on the other hand, is, we've got one so clearly defined color. And then we've got our single sword cutting through. It's like a pulling back to provide some sense of clarity and inspiration. We've got our sparks of inspiration here. Now over here, where we started with this reading is with these 7 cups of and I talked about when this card came up, it feels like I'm peering into the depths. And it this feels kind of a mystical experience almost. Maybe it's the way the kind of golden is bleeding into the gray background. But it almost feels like we're peering into the abyss here. We're peering into the void. We're peering into the depths. and finding something murky and kind of hard to define. It's like a lot when we peer into that void. We're getting a lot of stuff, and we're emerging with this like clarity, like this singular, like inspiration, this singular like spark towards action, because this feels like such an active card, by doing all of this kind of like murky depth sort of stuff. So if I were to answer the question, what is tarot, according to the Tarot de Ozarks, this would be that tarot is a space where we can peer into the depths, kind of work through and exist within like a lot of conflicting ideas and thoughts and information, and like sift through that which is not clearly defined for us, that which is kind of like half formed, half kind of muddy and murky in our minds, and emerge with a clear, straightforward, like action-oriented message. And it's like, then there's like the, with the plant matter coming out of this this what looks like a crown here, like, it's victorious. We are emerging victorious. Like, we conquered the depths. We conquered confusion, and we are emerging victorious with clarity, and with a direction. Yeah, I think that is like, that feels right, especially with this deck. Like, working through it sometimes can feel a bit like this, where it's like, because it is so abstract, because it is Tarot de Marseille, but not really, and it feels like it ought to be, a lot of people work with Tarot de Marseille and pip decks specifically, like just using, number. So we've got 7 and we've got cups, we've got a suit. So let's put those two together. But this feels like there is, so much more. And I think there's a way, working with this deck, if you want to just say like, here's 10, here's swords, let's put them together, and what do we got? I think there's, I'm not going to tell you what to do with a deck, or how to read tarot. There are so many ways to read tarot, but to me, at least, this, if you're like willing to kind of dive in and be a little confused for a second and let it wash over you, the readings that come out of working with this are just so profound, at least for me. It's like, and I could just get lost in the details that are going on here, and what they might be pointing towards. And yeah, I don't know, I think it's just well worth the willingness to kind of dive in and experience the cards, as opposed to like forcing thought onto them, forcing what we know onto them, but to look at them and really let them kind of get into your cells and do some really cool magic. Like, what do how does it feel when you look at this? How does it feel when you look at this next to this? Which card do you want to live in right now in this moment? Sometimes I might pick this. But yeah. Okay, so that is the Tarot des Ozarks. De Ozarks. I always want to add an S, Tarot des Ozarks. Thank you so much for joining me for this little walkthrough. I really wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do going into this, but I think I said what I wanted to say about it. If you have this deck, tell me about it. Tell me about your experience with it. And if you don't have it, tell me, like, what do you think when you look at these cards? Are you like, no thanks, not for me, and that's okay. Not every deck has to be for everybody. Or, yeah, is there something interesting here? Something else that you see that I am not seeing? I'd love to hear it. All right. Well, I will thank you so much for joining me. I'll include all the relevant information that you need down below. And until next time, friends, I will see you in the lab. Bye.